He also faces a special allegation that he personally used a dangerous and deadly weapon, that being a knife. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
Los Angeles, December 31st, 2025. The golden morning light over Forest Lawn Memorial Park illuminated a gathering of Hollywood's elite, united in mourning. Today, the world honors Rob Reiner, the iconic director, actor, and producer. Among the mourners, Aaron Sorkin would deliver a tribute that stunned everyone in attendance, blending eloquence, humor, and profound emotion. The chapel was filled with stars: Meryl Streep, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and many others whose careers had intersected with Reiner's over 5 decades. Fans outside held candles, photographs, and signs reading, "Thank you for the stories and forever in our hearts, Rob Reiner." Inside, the service began with a montage celebrating Reiner's life and career, childhood photos, behind-the-scenes moments from The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, and This Is Spinal Tap, and a curated playlist of songs Reiner loved. The atmosphere balanced nostalgia, respect, and the warmth of shared memories. When Aaron Sorkin approached the podium, silence swept the room. Known for his mastery of dialogue, Sorkin delivered a speech that was part eulogy, part cinematic monologue. "Rob didn't just make movies," Sorkin said, voice steady but emotional. "He made us laugh. He made us cry. He made us human." He reflected on Reiner's dedication to truth in storytelling, his ability to balance humor with deep human insight, and his unwavering integrity. Highlighting A Few Good Men as a testament to courage and The Princess Bride as a fusion of whimsy and wisdom, Sorkin painted a portrait of Reiner as both an artist and a moral compass. Following Sorkin's speech, tributes flooded social media. Spielberg wrote, "Rob was a lighthouse in a stormy sea of creativity. The world is dimmer without him." Streep commented, "He made us laugh. He made us cry. And in doing so, he made us better." Even younger filmmakers shared anecdotes of inspiration and mentorship, citing Reiner's films as a bridge between classic storytelling and contemporary cinema. Legendary filmmaker Martin Scorsese shared a deeply personal reflection on the loss of his longtime friend and collaborator, Rob Reiner, and Reiner's wife, Michelle, in a guest essay published in the New York Times on December 25th. Writing directly and without embellishment, Scorsese addressed the difficulty of speaking about them in the past tense. "Rob Reiner was my friend, and so was Michelle. From now on, I'll have to use the past tense, and that fills me with such profound sadness," Scorsese wrote. But there's no other choice. Rob Reiner was 78 years old, and Michelle Reiner was 70. On December 14th, the couple was found dead inside their home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Reports stated they were discovered with lacerations consistent with a knife. Their son, Nick Reiner, who is 32, has been arrested and charged with the killings of his parents. Rob Reiner, 78, and Michelle Reiner, 70, were found dead in their Brentwood, Los Angeles home on December 14th, and their son, Nick Reiner, 32, has been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. Scorsese detailed their friendship dating back to the early 1970s, Reiner's family background in comedy, and his role in The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013. Scorsese wrote that he first became acquainted with Rob Reiner shortly after relocating to Los Angeles in the early 1970s. Both men had grown up on the East Coast, and they spent time together at gatherings hosted by actor George Memoli, where comedians and actors regularly met. Reiner's upbringing in entertainment was central to those early conversations. His mother, Estelle Reiner, was a singer and actress, while his father, Carl Reiner, gained recognition through Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows. Carl Reiner worked alongside Neil Simon and Mel Brooks, and later partnered with Brooks on the 2000-Year-Old Man routine. Scorsese described this influence as New York comedy at its finest, writing that it was the kind of humor he had grown up around. Scorsese recalled feeling comfortable with Reiner almost immediately. He described him as very funny, sometimes sharply so, but never someone who tried to dominate a space. He had a beautiful sense of uninhibited freedom, fully enjoying the life of the moment, Scorsese wrote, adding that Reiner's laugh was unmistakable. He remembered a moment during a ceremony honoring Reiner at Lincoln Center. Actor Michael McKean performed a parody of formal tribute speeches, and before the joke reached its ending, Reiner laughed so loudly that the sound carried across the auditorium. Although they respected each other's work for many years, Scorsese and Reiner collaborated professionally in 2013 on The Wolf of Wall Street. Scorsese wrote that he immediately thought of Reiner when casting the role of Jordan Belfort's father, a character played opposite Leonardo DiCaprio. According to Scorsese, Reiner was able to improvise easily, had a strong command of comedy, and worked naturally with DiCaprio and the rest of the cast. He said Reiner understood the emotional tension of the character, portraying a father who loved his son, took pride in his success, and sensed that his choices would lead to consequences. Scorsese pointed to a specific scene in which Jon Favreau's character explains that Belfort could leave his company before the Securities and Exchange Commission files charges. As Reiner's character watches his son hesitate and decide not to walk away, the realization is conveyed silently through his expression. Scorsese wrote that the performance affected him while filming, again during editing, and once more when watching the finished film. He added that thinking about the tenderness of those scenes is now especially painful. In his essay, Scorsese also reflected on Rob Reiner's work behind the camera. He identified Misery as his favorite film directed by Reiner, describing it as a very special film and pointing to the performances by Kathy Bates and James Caan. He also wrote that this is Spinal Tap stands in a class of its own and called it an immaculate creation. He explained that, like their many loved ones and friends, he needs to imagine them alive and well. Scorsese pictured a moment where he might once again sit next to Rob at a dinner or party, hear his laugh, see his face, listen to his stories, and appreciate his natural comic timing. Luke is a writer of many mediums with over 7 years of experience, specializing in copywriting, content writing, and screenwriting. Based in Malaysia, his passion for storytelling began at a young age, fueled by fantastical tales and his love for the horror genre. What began as a hobby then blossomed into a diverse writing career, encompassing poetry, songs, screenplays, and now engaging articles. Luke's work has appeared in notable outlets like MovieWeb, Certified Forgotten, High on Films, and Signal Horizon. His talent for crafting compelling narratives has been recognized by being a. Scorsese's tribute comes in the wake of Reiner's tragic death on November 24, 2025, when the beloved director and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found murdered in their Brentwood home. Reiner, known for his wide-ranging body of work that blended commercial success with emotional depth, left behind classics such as This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men, When Harry Met Sally, and Misery. In his message, Scorsese called Reiner a filmmaker of rare honesty and human insight, adding that he admired how Reiner navigated diverse genres with clarity and heart. He singled out Misery, the adaptation of Stephen King's best-selling novel, for its bold tonal shifts and intense character work. It's not just a great suspense film, Scorsese said. It's a study of performance and fear, and one of the purest examples of Rob's command over tone and storytelling. He wrote, "Right away, I loved hanging out with Rob. We had a natural affinity for each other. He was hilarious and sometimes bitingly funny, but he was never the kind of guy who would take over the room. He had a beautiful sense of uninhibited freedom, fully enjoying the life of the moment, and he had a great barreling laugh." Scorsese, whose own career has spanned decades and influenced filmmakers around the world, also highlighted Reiner's generosity as a collaborator and mentor. Rob didn't just make films, he made room for the actors, the crew, the audience, Scorsese noted. His heart was as big as his talent. Even if you don't know who Rob Reiner was, you're living in a world he helped shape. He leveraged the TV fame he earned in the 1970s playing Mike Meathead Stivic, the son-in-law and main adversary of motormouth bigot Archie Bunker on All in the Family, and became a filmmaker responsible for some of the most beloved American movies of the 80s and 90s, Stand By Me, 86, The Princess Bride, 87, When Harry Met Sally, 89, Misery, 90, A Few Good Men, 92. Reiner was one of a handful of directors who released 5 consecutive films widely regarded as classics, an achievement made even more impressive when you consider his genre agnosticism. He did coming-of-age, adventure comedy, romantic comedy, thriller, courtroom drama. Reinerologists would add This Is Spinal Tap to that run. his 1984 feature debut that was largely improvised by Reiner and co-stars Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer. It launched Guest into a career of mockumentary film and indirectly led to a sitcom subgenre represented by The Office, Parks and Recreation, Modern Family, and Abbott Elementary. That's the thing about Reiner. He didn't just make movies, he solidified careers. As a co-founder of Castle Rock Pictures, named for the town in Stand By Me, the setting for so many Stephen King stories, Reiner co-produced Whit Stillman's Barcelona and The Last Days of Disco, Richard Linklater's Before trilogy, Guests Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, and A Mighty Wind, Kenneth Branagh's Uncut, 4-Hour Hamlet, more King adaptations including The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. Reiner's own films as director, written by industry heavyweights like Nora Ephron and William Goldman and Aaron Sorkin, made catchphrases from seemingly innocuous lines, "I'll have what she's having," "I'm your number one fan," "You can't handle the truth," "As you wish," "These go to 11. Reiner's streak ended in 1994 with North, an arch and disjointed comedy about a boy trying to emancipate himself from his parents. I hated this movie. Hated this movie, Roger Ebert wrote in a pan. Talk about careers. Those two lines were so widely quoted that they led to Ebert publishing an anthology, I Hated This Movie. But enough said about North. Look at the follow-up, the 1996 political comedy romance The American President. It was written by Sorkin, whose screenwriting career took off when he adapted his play A Few Good Men for Reiner. Sorkin said his first draft of The American President was 385 pages, 3 times the length of a typical feature script, so Reiner made him cut all the subplots about the president's staff and focus on the 2 main characters, the president, Michael Douglas, and the lobbyist he falls in love with, Annette Bening. The deleted material and several cast members, including Martin Sheen, ended up in Sorkin's The West Wing, a favorite of young political staffers and policy wonks who. Reiner himself was a high-profile progressive political activist who helped legalize same-sex marriage, destigmatize drug addiction, and tax tobacco products in California. The latter arguably kicked off the final push to ban indoor smoking throughout the country while simultaneously funding early childhood programs in the state of California. The marriage equality campaign started in 2008 when California voters banned same-sex marriage, inspiring Reiner to build a coalition called American Foundation for Equal Rights, which gave financial and legal support to same-sex couples who had sued over the ban. The lawsuits were resolved in a 2010 U.S. District Court decision declaring Proposition 8 unconstitutional. That set off a chain of social and legal arguments that led to the 2015 Supreme Court decision Obergefell v. Hodges, which held that the right to marry was covered by the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and could not be abridged or denied license by the government. A lot of Hollywood political advocacy is about jumping on a train that's already moving and doing a little bit to help, one of Reiner's colleagues told Politico. Rob created his own trains and through old-school politicking, he got others to jump on. Reiner's public-facing support of progressive causes made him a bogeyman of the American right and landed him on the sorts of enemies lists that Archie Bunker might have penned had he lived long enough to become a Fox News junkie. In 2002, Reiner was pressured to run for governor of California on the Democratic ticket and unseat Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Republican. Reiner declined. He visited Tallahassee, Florida, to help count ballots in the disputed 2000 presidential election and spoke to elementary schoolers about what the crisis could mean for the country. He opposed the invasion of Iraq and later directed and co-starred in the political thriller Shock and Awe, which declared the war a product of government lies endorsed by a compliant media, campaigned for Howard Dean in 2004, and hosted fundraisers for Hillary Clinton in 2008. Rob Reiner was known as a force for good. That's at the root of the extraordinary outpouring of grief following news that the actor and filmmaker had been stabbed to death, along with his second wife and creative partner, Michelle Singer Reiner, in their Los Angeles home. The LAPD confirmed that the couple's son, Nick Reiner, who struggled with drug addiction throughout his adult life and wrote a movie about his experiences, 2015's Being Charlie, that his father directed, was booked for the murders. The tragedy occurred 3 days after the Reiners co-hosted a Democratic Party fundraiser, headlined by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Conan O'Brien, and 1 day after the family attended a holiday party at O'Brien's house. Nick Reiner was a guest there, and witnesses told the New York Times that Rob and Nick had a heated argument, with the father warning his son that his behavior was inappropriate. Then came an everyday horror that occurs in households across countries and cultures. Its savagery was all the more disturbing knowing what a compassionate, effective man Rob Reiner was in life and work. The deeper you dig into his life story, the more influence is revealed. Some of it is accidental, but more seems to be the byproduct of specific choices. Of course, without Reiner, Stillman and Linklater probably don't make it into the art house pantheon. Branagh doesn't get to hold the record for the longest theatrically released Shakespeare film. John Sayles doesn't make one of his masterpieces, Lone Star, and the four young leads of Stand By Me, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell, River Phoenix, and Will Wheaton, chart very different courses through the film industry. Everything I have is because of Rob Reiner, O'Connell said. Phoenix doesn't play the son of Harrison Ford in The Mosquito Coast, which was filmed 9 months after Stand By Me wrapped, and Ford doesn't recommend him to Steven Spielberg to play the young Indiana Jones in the franchise's 1989 installment, The Last Crusade. Whedon likely doesn't end up on the bridge of the USS Enterprise as Wunderkind Wesley Crusher in the 1987 pilot of Star Trek, The Next Generation, which was shot 1 year after Stand By Me's release. Princess Bride actors Robin Wright and Cary Elwes don't get briefly vaulted onto the A-list, laying the foundation for decades of steady employment. Nor does Kathy Bates, a barely known theater and film actress, win an Oscar for playing Annie Wilkes in Misery. Mandy Patinkin and Wallace Shawn don't become actors who can't eat out without being asked for autographs and selfies. Reiner knew he was a significant figure. He didn't lack for nominations and awards or industry appreciation for the money he made for studios. And he knew his success was no accident. He was a Nepo baby after all, the son of singer-actor Estelle Reiner and writer-actor Carl Reiner, the creator of The Dick Van Dyke Show. Maybe that's why he didn't pull punches. Reiner was a persistent critic of President Donald Trump, from the 2016 campaign through an MSNBC appearance 6 weeks ago in which he said, "The American people need to be warned that their democracy is being taken from them." A day after Reiner's murder, a Trump social media post called him a tortured and struggling, but once very talented movie director and comedy star, and held him responsible for the murders due to the anger he caused others by having Trump derangement syndrome. Even Trump's. When an artist goes out so abruptly, and in such a horrifying way, it inevitably affects how you experience their work. Rewatching bits and pieces of the director's filmography this week, the ongoing investigation into the killings of Reiner and his wife kept intruding. At the end of Stand By Me, Reiner shows Chris, Phoenix, walking away from Gordy Wheaton in a long shot while narration by the adult Gordy, Richard Dreyfuss, tells us that Chris escaped his abusive household, left Castle Rock, and even managed to go to college. But Chris died intervening in a confrontation between two men at a gas station, one unarmed, the other with a knife. He was stabbed in the throat, Gordy says. He died almost instantly. Reiner doesn't flash forward to the murder or the funeral. He holds on Chris walking away, then dissolves to the same shot without Chris in it. Chris's exit became even more affecting 7 years after Stand By Me's release, when Phoenix died of an overdose. It's such an original and powerful way to show a sudden death that John Singleton borrowed it for Doughboy's demise in Boys and the Hood. Singleton died of a stroke in 2019 when he was just 51. The scene now carries so many unintentional associations, I thought it would buckle under the weight of life. Watching it again, I thought of Chris and Gordy and Doughboy Phoenix and Singleton, and now Rob and Michelle. And yet, for all the unwanted thoughts that compete with King's fiction, the scene is what it always had been. One of the great moments in American cinema. One where past and present, youth and maturity, life and death merge within the snow globe of art. Love has teeth, Gordy says. They bite. The wounds never close. From These Go to 11 to I'll Have What She's Having, Rob Reiner's movies are a reliable source of instantly quotable movie lines. If you had to pick the 5 most famous words in his filmography, though, they would probably be, "You can't handle the truth." Jack Nicholson uttered that immortal sentence, penned by Aaron Sorkin, in the Oscar-nominated courtroom drama A Few Good Men, which premiered in theaters 30 years ago on December 11, 1992. Playing esteemed military officer Colonel Nathan Jessup, Nicholson threw those words back in the face of prosecuting U.S. Navy lawyer Lieutenant Daniel Coffey, Tom Cruise, for having the temerity to badger Jessup about the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of one of the Marines on his military base. Written in vintage high-volley Sorkin fashion, the sequence still crackles with electricity 3 decades later. Small wonder that it has since been spoofed in everything from The Simpsons to sales rep training videos. As much pleasure as we take in dropping a good, you can't handle the truth reference every now and then, that's nothing compared with how much Nicholson enjoyed saying that particular line on set. In a 2017 conversation with Reiner, the director remembered his star, who received the 10th of his 12 Oscar nominations for A Few Good Men, happily performing the scene over and over again entirely of his own volition. Before we started shooting, I asked Jack if he wanted me to shoot his angles first or Cruise's reaction shots first so that he'd be off camera, Reiner explains, adding that Nicholson initially requested the off-camera option so that he'd have time to rehearse his delivery. As it turned out, though, the actor couldn't resist delivering a camera-ready performance on every off-camera take. Every time we did the scene, Jack did it perfectly, Reiner says, laughing. After a couple of takes, I said, "Jack, maybe you want to save a little bit for when we've got the camera on you." And he replied, "Rob, you don't understand. If Reiner was concerned that Nicholson wasn't saving the best stuff for last, the shining star proved otherwise when it was finally his turn in the spotlight. When the camera came around to him, he did the exact same performance that he gave off camera. And it was great every time." Reiner saw another side of Nicholson, the screenwriter side, when the duo reunited 15 years after A Few Good Men for 2007's The Bucket List, a gentle geriatric comedy about two men, Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, finally fitting in all the things they've wanted to do as they confront the end of their lives. In his pre-fame Hollywood days, Nicholson alternated acting jobs with writing gigs on such 60s B-movies as Flight to Fury and the Monkees cult classic Head, and he brought that early experience to Reiner's set. Every single morning, I'd go to Jack's trailer, and whatever scene we were working on that day, we'd go over it and make it better, Reiner recalled. That was a big kick for me, working with him to improve the scene for the day. We didn't do that as much on A Few Good Men because Aaron Sorkin wrote an incredible screenplay. But Jack is also a writer. Reiner couldn't have known this at the time, but The Bucket List also proved to be Nicholson's last star turn. 3 years later, in 2010, he played a supporting role opposite Reese Witherspoon, Owen Wilson, and Paul Rudd in James L. Brooks's How Do You Know, and since then Nicholson has been on an extended hiatus from the silver screen. For a time, the actor was attached to headline a remake of the Oscar-nominated 2016 German comedy Toni Erdmann, written by girls duo Lena Dunham and Jenny Connor and co-starring Kristen Wiig. The Princess Bride star Cary Elwes has broken his silence on director Rob Reiner's murder. Actor and director Reiner and his wife Michelle were both found dead on December 14th at their $13.5 million Brentwood home. The couple's son Nick was arrested that night and has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Nick had a history of drug issues, going to rehab for the first time when he was just 15. He was living in his parents' guest house after a bout of homelessness. Friends and family of the pair have been leaving their tributes, and now Cary Elwes, who worked on The Princess Bride with Reiner, has left his own message. He shared a statement along with footage of Reiner guiding him through a fight scene which was featured in the 1987 movie. The clip was followed by another of a 25th anniversary reunion Elwes had with Reiner. The Princess Bride starred Elwes, who played the farmhand Wesley with a quest to win the hand of Princess Buttercup. To do this, he and his friends must rescue her from Prince Humperdinck. Writing in an Instagram tribute, Elwes said, "Enough time has passed that I can finally put my grief into words. I was 24 when I first met Rob Reiner on The Princess Bride. And from that very first meeting I fell in love with him. I was already a fan of his work, so meeting him in person was a dream come true. As we began spending more time together, I knew this was someone I wanted in my life." The actor added, "This was a man who felt deeply, whose heart was filled with love and compassion. He wasn't impressed by how much money you had or if you had a privileged upbringing. He just wanted to know if you were a good guy. He always tried to find the best in people. And if that person had problems, he felt bad for them." Nick had a long history of drug issues, having gone to rehab for the first time at 15 and plunged into multiple spells of homelessness before his latest stay in his parents' guest house, which he confessed he wrecked, once while spun out on uppers that kept him up for days on end. He was also reportedly diagnosed with schizophrenia. After a flood of tributes from the couple's friends, a devastated Elvis, 63, broke his silence Tuesday with a fond Instagram tribute to his late director. His statement was accompanied by on-set footage of Reiner guiding him through a fight scene with Andre the Giant that will be instantly recognizable to fans of the film. That clip was followed by one of a 25th anniversary reunion Elvis had with Reiner and the Princess Bride's female lead Rob Reiner, with the director joking that the actors looked exactly the same while he himself was grayer, fatter, and balder. The Princess Bride starred Elvis, the dashing farmhand Wesley, in the rollicking tale of his quest to win the hand of Princess Buttercup, played by Wright, 59. In order to do so, he and his motley crew of fantastical friends must first rescue her from Prince Humperdinck, played by Susan Sarandon's ex-husband Chris Sarandon. Enough time has passed that I can finally put my grief into words, Elvis wrote in his Instagram tribute, which he shared to the platform on Tuesday. I was 24 when I first met Rob Reiner on The Princess Bride, and from that very first meeting I fell in love with him. I was already a fan of his work, so meeting him in person was a dream come true. As we began spending more time together, I knew this was someone I wanted in my life, he recalled. He used to say, once the movie is released, it belongs to other people. But while you are making it, that's your time on the planet, so you want to make it good. And boy, was my time with him on The Princess Bride beyond great. I can't remember a single day without laughter, the Robin Hood Men in Tights star added. Reiner, 78, and Michelle, 70, were found stabbed to death December 14th at their $13.5 million Brentwood estate, where their son Nick, 32, lived in the guest house. Pictured 2013 statement was accompanied by on-set footage of Reiner guiding him through a fight scene with Andre the Giant that will be instantly recognizable to fans of the film. Enough time has passed that I can finally put my grief into words, Elvis wrote in his Instagram tribute, which included a clip of him and Reiner laughing on the set of their film. Elvis also made reference to Reiner's love story with his incredibly loving, intelligent wife, who was passionate about her family and about lifting others up. The Reiners were a great team, whose only interest in fame was that it allowed them to shine a light on causes they believed in, especially helping those who were marginalized, according to Elvis. In a town where many talk the talk, they truly walked it. Whenever we got together, we would talk about family, life, movies, and politics. But without fail, Rob would always find a way to make us laugh. That was important to him. Finding the joy, Elvis sweetly added. And if I could make him laugh in return, I felt like I had won the lottery. His laugh was one of the greatest sounds I've ever known, so heartfelt it still rings in my ears. He thanked the Reiners for sharing your life and art with us. Because my heart still aches every time I think of you, I know the grief of losing you too soon will likely never go away. Sure, death cannot stop true love, but life is pain without you.